He knew Catherine the Great, Count Cagliostro, Casanova, and the Man in the Moon's daughter. He rode on a cannonball, and he lived on the moon. His exploits were celebrated in the most lavish color film extravaganza made during the Third Reich. He was the legendary Baron Munchausen, and the picture was Joseph von Bach's Munchausen. Oddly enough, he really existed. The Baron Munchausen of history was Hieronymus Karl Friedrich, Freiherr von Munchausen, an 18th century German officer whose name became a synonym for extravagant boasting. Born in Hanover in 1720, he traveled widely, fought in Russia in the service of Catherine the Great, and was imprisoned by the Turks in 1737. After retiring in 1752 and returning to his home at Bodenwerder, he became famous until his death in 1797 for his prodigiously exaggerated tales of adventure. A collection of these by German scientist and librarian Rudolf Erich Raspe appeared anonymously in London in 1785 under the title Baron Munchausen's Narrative of His Marvelous Travels and Campaigns in Russia. It betrayed the influence of Swift's Gulliver's Travels and was hugely popular, although no copy of this first edition is known to have survived. An enlarged edition, Wunderbare Reisen zu Wasser und zu Lande, Verzüge und lustige Abenteuer des Freiherren von Munchausen, was translated into German in 1786 by poet Gottfried August Berger, who reworked the already improbable exploits even further. Karl Immermann published a novel, Munchausen, eine Geschichte in Arabesken, in 1838-1839, but this concerned the original Baron's nephew. Karl Hensel retold the legend again after the First World War as Das war Munchausen. The greatest German film studio, UFA, would celebrate its 25th anniversary in March 1943. In 1941, propaganda minister and cinema czar Joseph Goebbels commissioned an epic spectacle to commemorate the occasion. It would prove to be the biggest entertainment project of the Third Reich. The Jubilee film, was launched in 1941, with Joseph von Bachy, a young Hungarian, assigned to direct. It was at this point that Goebbels saw Alexander Korda's The Thief of Baghdad, and discovered in it exactly the type of grand-scale fantasy adventure that he wanted produced. When von Bachy asked his friend Erich Kästner for suggestions as to what type of spectacle he should make, the novelist told him, "Well, your commission has come from the world's greatest liar. Why not do a film about his closest competitor, the Baron Munchausen?" Unaware of the genesis of the picture and the irony of its subject matter, Goebbels allocated a 5 million Reichsmark budget and promised von Bachy that he could use as many stars as he wanted. Hans Arbers, the most popular German film actor of his generation, would star as Baron Munchausen. His co-stars came to include Brigitte Honay as Catherine the Great, Katha Hack as Baroness Munchausen, Hermann Spielmann as Christian Kuchenreiter, Ferdinand Marian as Count Cagliostro, Leo Slezak as Sultan Abdul Hamid, Gustav Waldo as Casanova, and Ilse Werner as Princess Isabella d'Este. Von Bachy wanted Kästner to write the script, but the Nazis had blacklisted him in 1933. Despite the fact that he was the author of several enormously popular books, including Emil und der Detektiv, Kästner was prevented from writing under his own name. Goebbels agreed to allow him to work on the film as long as his real name didn't appear in the picture's credits. He would select a pseudonym, and the censors would look the other way. Reichsfilmdramaturg Dr. Fritz Hippler, a close Goebbels associate, and producer Eberhard Schmidt proceeded to engage Kästner's services. The nom de plume he chose was Berthold Berger. The given name appears to have been taken to honor Bertolt Brecht, whom the propaganda minister loathed and who had fled the country following the Reichstag fire of 27 February 1933. The surname, which means citizen, evoked the name of Munchausen's first German chronicler. Kastner drew upon the books by Raspe and Berger, for whom Munchausen had been the Lügenbaron, the Baron of Lies, from Lower Saxony. His screenplay contained ample room for special effects and trick photography, and it included plenty of supporting characters that would allow the studio to showcase as many UFA stars as possible in cameo roles. Pre-production began in 1941. It took 5 months to create the costumes and build the sets. The elaborate 18th century sets, some of the most sumptuous ever created for a German film, were designed by Otto Gursdorf and Emil Hassler, art director on Fritz Lang's M and Das Testament der Dr. Babus. Konstantin Erman-Chet supervised the staging, filming and editing of the special effects over a 10-month period. Such complex processes had been used commonly during the 1920s. The urban miniatures used throughout Fritz Lang's 1927 Metropolis come immediately to mind, but not since the end of the silent era had technical staff been called upon to create such wizardry. UFA technicians studied the special effects and color artistry of Korda's The Thief of Baghdad, David O. Selznick's Gone with the Wind, and Walt Disney's Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. Munchausen would be Germany's fourth color feature film, and Goebbels was hopeful that its color cinematography would surpass Hollywood's. Authentic Meissen place settings with silver and gold cutlery were obtained from museums and palaces for the fabulous Russian banquet scene. The liveried servants in this scene were played by SS men, whom the producer is said to have believed were less likely to walk off the set with priceless props than regular extras. The glittering Venetian sequence was filmed on location in the summer of 1942. Film correspondent Eberhard von Weisse described the precious carnival costumes, robes for the doges, dominoes and harlequin costumes, tri-corded hats and crimson sashes for the gondoliers, sedan chairs and flowers by the kilo. He also noted the thousands of costumes hanging row upon row in the warehouse, while outside the sons and daughters of Venice, having been attracted by newspaper advertisements asking for extras, waited to slip into the garments of their ancestors. Even the Italian police bowed to Munchausen, barring a portion of the Grand Canal to public traffic for a single day. The regatta sequence appears on screen for only a few minutes, but more than 4 hours of color footage was shot. The use of handheld cameras during the duel gave the scene its dazzling, giddy sensation. Munchausen opens with the Baron's sumptuous 18th century ball at Schloss Bodenwerder. We observe a lover's quarrel between two guests. The young woman flees the castle and leaps into her Mercedes. What we have been viewing has been a costume party. It is not the 18th century, but rather the 20th. Such playfulness awaits us at every turn. Munchausen and his wife attempt to reconcile the young couple. He shows them a portrait of the man he describes as his ancestor, the fabulous Baron Munchausen. At this point, the framing device ends, and a flashback, which will occupy almost the entire picture, takes us to the 18th century. From this point on, it's a roller coaster ride that includes eternal youth, an invisibility ring, Cagliostro, Casanova, Catherine the Great, a cannonball ride to Constantinople, and a Venetian balloon ride to the moon. There, the Baron's manservant, Christian, ages and dies, but the immortal Munchausen lives on, accompanied by the daughter of the man in the moon, whose head appears to be removable. The flashback now ends, and we return to the framing device with which the film began. Munchausen confesses that he and his legendary ancestor are one and the same. Alarmed, the young couple beat a hasty retreat. Munchausen renounces the gift of eternal youth, having decided to grow old with the Baroness in Schloss Bodenwerder. After almost 2 years of pre-production and filming, Munchausen was completed early in 1943. The rough cut ran 2.5 hours. After some excisions, the original German release ran 133 minutes. It was premiered on the 5th of March 1943 at Berlin's prestigious Uferpalast am Sohr. Just in time, as it turned out, for the legendary theatre was destroyed in an air raid shortly thereafter. Not surprisingly, it was an enormous critical and popular success. Singled out for praise were the film's special effects and Agfacolor cinematography by Werner Krien. The special effects are indeed as impressive by 21st century standards as they were in 1943. Remarkable was the fact that Ufer had been able to commit such enormous financial and technical resources at a time when Germany was fighting and beginning to lose a world war. The picture went into general release on 17 June, trimmed to 118 minutes. 2 different export versions were also prepared, both of which differ slightly from the domestic release. Post-war reissues generally ran about 90 minutes. For decades, most prints were produced from Agfacolor nitrate stock, whose tones had faded somewhat inconsistently. Now fully restored, audiences can enjoy the painstakingly color-coordinated design of Munchausen in prints that are as stunning as they were in 1943. Historian David Stewart Hull has discussed the autumn tints for the Braunschweig court, wintry whites and blues for the Russian episodes, brilliant golds and red for the Turkish campaign, darker tones of the Renaissance painters for the Venetian interlude, and a bizarre mixture of almost everything for the lunar landscape. If one considers only fictional films, then Nazi cinema's finest moment is arguably Munchausen. The only Third Reich picture that rivals it in scale and sweep is Kohlberg, released in January 1945. Because Munchausen was produced under Nazi auspices, the inevitable question arises and must be addressed. Does it contain propaganda? In a speech to members of the film industry given on the 28th of March 1933, Joseph Goebbels counseled his audience to ignore blatant ideological messages. Concentrate on visual artistry, he told them, for this is vital to the communication of ideology. Production values, scale, and cinematography suggest the power, solidity, and vision of the state that produces it. As the propaganda minister later said in a 12 October 1941 speech to the Hitler Youth, in a time where the entire nation is being weighed down with such heavy loads and worries, even entertainment is of particular political value. To this extent, then, all Third Reich productions can be interpreted as propaganda films. Yet, Munchausen was conceived as escapist entertainment, containing no ideological undertones. The search for the Nazi element in German entertainment pictures made between 1933 and 1945 seems at best myopic. It has to be there. One can almost hear its practitioners whispering, if only we keep looking. Munchausen is a lavish, visually impressive fantasy film filled with adventure, magic, and surrealist sight gags. Its larger-than-life hero is roguish, mischievous, charming, and thoroughly seductive. The picture was made to entertain millions of Germans whose cities, homes, and emotional roof beams were collapsing all around them. Must we look further?